Hi everyone, thanks for joining. So my name's Ian Humphreys. I work at Brickflow, I'm one of the founders, and joining me this evening is Ian Goodchild. Ian is, hi Ian, you okay?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, good. Sorry about the horrible background and stuff. My office is a mess.
No worries. So Ian is someone that's used the Brickflow platform to secure finance on a development. And the idea of tonight's session is really just to talk you through how he started his property journey, how he got to become a property developer, and the trials and tribulations of that journey, wisdom that he can pass on to others. So Ian, just for reference, has zero construction expertise. He has no construction background. He'll tell you what he does, but he is now, I think the loan's going to complete tomorrow, so we might be tempting fate a bit by having this webinar. But Ian owns the site. He completed in cash on that a couple of weeks ago, and the loan's going to complete hopefully tomorrow. But it's a commercial property, so it's warehouses, and the input from Ian in terms of cash input versus the profit out on the other side is very good. And really we wanted to share the knowledge amongst others perhaps that are looking at commercial space and or are more novice or even complete first timers in the development space. So that's a bit about the tonight's session. So it's really just going to be Ian and I talking. If you've got any questions along the way, then please just put them in the chat, and we'll answer them as we go, or at the end. And there's a couple of things for you on screen now. So top one is to get access Brickflow yourself. That meeting link goes to everyone in the team, not just me. It does have my name on it though for some reason. We're also going to start a Telegram group, okay? So this is something new we haven't done before, and people have asked us how they can access other people within our community, our forum, if you like. So there's a lot of property professionals and developers within our database, within our community, and there's a lot of knowledge on there, a lot of experience, and I think what's really great about property development is everybody comes at it from a slightly different angle. There's no degree or A-level to become a property developer. Most people have very different experiences, some for construction, some from finance, some from risk, some from project management, and everyone comes at it from a slightly different position. So there's always whatever problem that you have in property development, there'll always be someone that's faced that problem. And so to be able to share that knowledge amongst your peer group, I think is very valuable. So the Telegram group is there for, there'll be a QR code at the end, but it's there really to try and share some ideas and some knowledge, to ask the questions that perhaps you're too afraid to ask people. You can do it in a Telegram forum anonymously, and hopefully feel more comfortable. So that's something we're starting today. Please do get involved with that, because we'd love to add value to more of our audience. As we said, any questions we'll tackle at the end. So for those that don't know us, this is who we are. We're a sourcing system, loan sourcing and packaging system for development finance. So we're trying to help developers do more with less. What we mean by that, and we'll do a demo of the system a bit later on in the webinar. What we mean by that is our system is about finding the best value loan each time. So every lender has a different way of calculating finance. So every project, there's always going to be one lender that's going to be better than any others, and the chances of being the same lender every time are practically zero. So we always say, you know, starting position on any development that you're looking at is to run it through Brickflow to understand what the finance is, what's the finance position, what deposit do I need to put into this site to make it work. If that works, then carry on, you know, carry on doing your due diligence. But if the finance doesn't work, then, you know, it's not worth wasting your time. So what the platform does really nicely is find the lender that's going to give you the best loan at the best price, so you can minimize your equity input and maximize your return on capital. And that's what we mean by that third bullet, eliminating inefficient equity deployment. So pretty much every deal that you look at, there'll always be someone that could be lending to you and putting you in a more efficient equity deployment position. So, quite often people be putting £1 million into a development when they could have actually put in £500,000, or they're putting in £500,000 when they could have put in 300,000. That money that you're not using in that development can be used to advance other schemes. So that's what we look to share with our community. Final point is that, penultimate point is, the system makes it easier for lenders to find loans, right? So it's cheaper, it's quicker, it's easier for lenders to accept loans through Brickflow. So by driving efficiencies on the lender side, we're able to make development finance cheaper. And if we can do that at scale, then development finance as a whole becomes cheaper. And if it becomes cheaper, sites that are currently marginal become profitable, more houses get built, and it's good for everyone in the whole economy, whole ecosystem. So a bit about us. So me, I've sort of talked on a bit, but my background is a financial intermediary. So I've always worked in this space, and more specifically commercial real estate loans. So development finance, commercial mortgages, bridging loans, all of those kind of things. I've done that for more than 15 years now. I've transacted on more than £1 billion of funding in over my career. And I'm also one of the founders of Brickflow. So the platform that you see today was my idea, and I built a lot of what goes on behind it. That's me basically. I'm also a property developer, so I know the pain points that developers face when trying to get finance. It's very difficult to find the best finance. In fact, it's practically impossible. So that's what led me to try and build Brickflow, was to enable people to find the best finance each time. Ian, welcome. Do you want to give us a little bit of background on you?
Yeah, I can do. Yeah. That's a very young picture you got there, by the way. That was, I think that was my first ever unit when we first started out. So that must be 8-9 years ago. So yeah, a lot more haggard since then. Yeah, so I started. Yeah, I started out. It must be about 10 years ago. So I started doing just t-shirt printing from half my mum's garage whilst I had another job. I used to work for a charity, and started doing some printing from there. Just bought the equipment and then started to kind of scale it little by little as we went along. Got quite a good break when we did the United Arab Emirates Paralympic kit when they came over, when the Paralympics were over here. So I actually did that and kind of filled my mum's house with boxes full of their gear that needed printing, and then sent back to them. So that kind of gave me a bit of the money to be able to get the first unit where that picture was taken, actually, and then kind of just scale out from there. After doing the printing embroidery, kind of logically looked at kind of school uniform. In our area where we are, there was only one provider, and they seemed to be relatively unchallenged, and so much to their dismay, we decided we were going to kind of step into that side as well. So kind of split the business into two, where we've got the print lab on one side that does kind of all the workwear and the signage and the printing and paper printing and all stuff like that. And then we've got PL Schoolwear, which is basically print lab schoolwear, on the other side. And then we've kind of grown over, I think, about 7 years schoolwear's properly been going. We've got 37 schools now that we do, like locally around Aylesbury and kind of Buckinghamshire area, and we're just opening up in Hemel in September, October. So we've kind of scaled quite a bit from there with doing bits. But it's gone quite well so far, and because of that, leads us on to where we're going now, really.
Cool, but it's fair to say that you have zero construction background.
Zero.
Yeah. Have you ever refurbished a house? Have you ever done extensions, loft conversions?
I only bought my first house a year ago.
Right.
So before even that, I didn't even own a house. I just kind of rented and ploughed money into this. So I had no idea before that stage of doing that. I mean, so just just because of doing stuff to do with work, it was easier to keep kind of retaining the profits in and keep kind of building to the point where we ended up buying a place. So I had no idea even about a general basic mortgage in terms of generals like a year ago. So, which is a bit bizarre. So then to jump completely on the other side, which a lot of people, I think maybe at the time that I was mad, but I've never really been that bothered about, the thoughts and process of other people. If I thought it was doable, I thought it was a good idea. I thought it was sensible for the businesses that I run, but also in terms of a long-term investment and pension pot on the family side as well. So I thought, well, the worst case scenario is you can look at it and it goes down a dead end, like you said at the start. You can run the financials and it doesn't add up. Okay, so then you kind of pivot and move on to something else. But every time I did it just seemed to take one more step closer to being a good idea and something that was achievable, really.
Yeah. I think people that have their own businesses and run their own businesses make a great transition to property development, because it's a lot of the same skills, right? It's being able to do a bit of everything. It's being able to manage risk. It's being able to know when to move and when to stick. And a lot of those skills, I think, are soft skills that you learn through life, not something that you can be taught necessarily.
Yeah, the risk part is exactly that. I think anyone who does run, anything from literally the day they start, they're taking a risk, but they're also taking a calculated risk. No one starts a business, no matter even from day one, where I was still working a bit of part-time, going into it thinking I'm just going to blindly do this no matter what. There's always been a thought process behind what everyone does. And it's no different with this. I think the difference is once you take, which is going to sound crazy, the money aspect kind of out of it in terms of when you're thinking about such larger figures. I remember when I first did an order for £1,000, I was like over the moon. But then they snowball. You get used to that kind of amount, and then you think, the next one, and then you get one that's 2,000 and 3,000. But it's the same job, it's the same thing we were doing, but it allowed us to progress. But once you take the monetary side out of it, I think you can look at it a bit clearer and assess the risk, and is it something that's worthwhile doing? Whereas if you let the figures that we would be spending on doing this project get in the way at first, you'd be like, I can't do that. That's far too much. That's such a big jump. But if you kind of look at them and go, okay, this is what we'd have to do, but what's the benefit and what do we get out of it? What would it be worth in the end? We're using it as an income in terms of through the rental property, we were renting out 7 out of the 9 units. So it's not only an income, it's also the asset side as well. Yeah.
I mean, that's probably a good point to move on to the next sort of slides, really. So the impetus or the catalyst for this was actually trying to find more space for your own business, right?
Yeah. So where we are there, luckily, I moved from the first place to one on this estate, but a smaller unit. But it actually was like a double size. It's probably about 900 square feet. And that at that point had hardly anything to fill it. But, you take the jump and you kind of fill the space. And then we moved down the road to this one, and that's actually got a mezzanine floor in it. And the idea is that you could see how the estate started to fill up over time. And I wanted to try and get one that was next door or close by and move to a big one. And there just wasn't the option to be able to kind of move. And if you did find something that was a lot bigger, the trouble was you're then going into really expensive rates. You're also very poor parking around where we are, that you get 1 or 2 spaces with a unit, so which doesn't help for my staff, let alone the customer base. So this one has a mezzanine floor in it. So we've managed to, upstairs we put the PL schoolwear, and downstairs we kind of had the print lab. We split the units all through through the rates department, got them to come out. We kind of separated everything off. And then the idea started to progress where we're like, right, we are literally busting at the seams at the minute. I've got stuff at the minute stored in my house because we just have no room to do stuff. The schoolwear is very, it's got a lot of stuff to it, and you have to hold a lot of the stock. In the summer, in July, you have the most stock you're ever going to have, and it just flies down from there. And the print lab side, you're turning over a lot. So we'll order on the Monday, it's probably gone out by the Thursday, Friday, it's gone. But you have to have the space for the machines and the prep of the jobs and stuff. And we just weren't able to progress and do a lot of the work. So it was time to move, and you just couldn't there was just nowhere around to even rent, let alone buy.
And everything was too expensive, and it was watching the founder, the man story that got you thinking, actually we could do this ourselves.
Yeah, well, it was something I didn't know, actually, because it weirdly, all the way from school, one of my favorite jobs, I actually worked in McDonald's for about 6 years, but I loved that job. And watching a movie about Ray Kroc, which is Michael Keaton plays him, and me and my wife were just watching it. And again, probably one of the stupid ideas that she just kind of bats off, like, okay, let's just not even entertain it, was when they said that McDonald's is one of the largest landowners in the world, is because they own the buildings they're in, which gives them the control and the stability over their businesses. If they then franchise it out to other people, and those other people aren't doing what they're supposed to do, they still own the core, the property, the building, the essence of what it is. And I just thought, well, that seems like a really sensible idea. And that stealing all the time from different businesses, they do that really well. We might take that from that. We might use that. I think every business sees something, going, oh, that's quite cool, and they use it. And I thought, well, McDonald's seemed to do it pretty well. And I just thought it was a great idea, and then started to look into, roughly, like, just Googled steel buildings, like rough costs, and just got some bits. And I thought, actually, compared to the equivalent of my building in that image there, if you wanted to buy it on the market, which there aren't any available anyway, but if I did, it's about £400,000 to buy it. And I kind of started to look at the steel structure, the kingspan, kind of cladding, and the bits, the elements that went with it, and thought, well, actually, this is something that's actually, achievable. They're not complicated buildings. It's, to dip your toe in is actually quite an easy one to do. We haven't got the huge, the bricks and the mortar and the elements of that. And I thought, it got me more thinking this could actually be something that could kind of work its way and kind of actually happen, really.
I think this is a really important part to make to anyone who's on, is that for most people, they immediately gravitate towards residential residential property when they're looking at starting property development. And I don't know why that is, because the returns on commercial property can be much greater. As Ian's just identified there, you're building a steel frame with corrugated iron around it, effectively, on a concrete slab. So in terms of how easy it is to build, it's very easy compared to residential. The cost versus the cost of materials versus the sort of GDV, again, it's very favorable. And the other thing with it is that you can turn these around much quicker. I was actually doing a couple of appraisals with a developer yesterday. He had some residential schemes, he had some commercial schemes. And the commercial scheme we were looking at was 64 units, like similar to kind of what Ian's building. He's got 9. So 64 warehouse units that he's building. And he can get all 64 done in about 15 months. And I mean, that's a huge project. But think of it as a return on capital. The amount he's investing, he's able to get that capital back within 15, 18 months, with sales. And on a residential scheme of similar size, you'd probably need to phase, certainly 2, maybe 3 phases. Your money's tied up for 3 or 4 years. So they are very attractive. And so I think from a starting point, it's not something people immediately think of, but in reality, it's got a lot going for it.
Yeah, I definitely think once I started to change my mindset to think down kind of these unit bits, I could just see different bits everywhere. I could see different potentials. We had an old Staples in Aylesbury, a huge unit, and I thought, and it was just sat there for ages, not rented. And I thought, well, could you, like I did with this one, re-rate it and get them? Could you split that big unit down into different smaller units? Could you start looking at things in a different way? Because inherently, everyone always says, get a buy to let, rent it out. I just see that as a lot of hassle. I don't want to deal with, in terms of the tenant point of view, which is an issue. They have huge amounts of rights, etc. Whether they pay or don't pay, it's just a bit of a pain. The difference with it, and also when you said about building the houses, so building houses, yes, it takes a long time. There's also people have different tastes. There's different things they're looking for. Yes, they go on the market. These buildings fundamentally, and what we're looking at when you rent it, get the big open space which the people want, because they want to be able to move into it and kind of put their stamp on it and put their machines in or put their sorting or processes in. So they want a big open space. They want toilets, well insulated, and that's about it. There's no heating that goes into the bigger ones, and the smaller ones we are actually putting heating and cooling in there. They're really thick, huge insulated Kingsbound panels, so that should, and we're insulating the slab. So trying to be quite eco-friendly in terms of getting the heat and keeping it in. But fundamentally, they're really, really easy to put up. I mean, the frame and the Kings. So basically the whole building. So everything below ground, we're looking roughly at around about between 12 and 14 weeks. So for everything into the ground to be done. And once that slab is poured, which is a huge, big slab, but once that slab is done, 6 weeks prior to that, these are already being built. So they're already being manufactured. They turn up on the lorries, and within 4 weeks, it will look like that one there. So within 4 weeks from being the ground level, it will have the sides on, it will be bolted, the windows will be in, all the different bits, the floor will already be skimmed. You're kind of there, apart from some plumbing and some, you want your fire lighting, etc., and all those bits to be done. But it really is an eye-opener for me, how quick a turnaround time. And you say that to people, oh, they're really quick, and everyone's like, no, it'll take ages into the ground and doing all these different bits. I think the biggest issue we have on this one is the fact that we've got a huge attenuation tank for the drainage. That's one of the biggest things. We have to get the drainage. So other than that, it's the groundwork.
That's the site, right? Rather than the actual
that's the site.
That's
just because we're in ridiculous
site.
Clay. We're in hugely blue clay where we are, and that's just where the site is. So we had to put lots in, and so far that's been a consideration we've had to look at. But other than that, the people who design the building actually design the slab and then hand that over to the groundwork. So build it like this, do this, and we're going to come on and we're going to kind of bolt on top. So they are very much, I think, an underestimated kind of area to build in, and that's why we've never done it. And yet, so far, touch wood, we're going right so far.
But I think you make a really good point on tenants as well, because you have an FRI lease, fully repairing and insuring lease, typically with a commercial tenant, and I mean, gone are the days where people might sign up for 15, 20 years as standard, but you're still going to get most people to sign up for 5 years. Whereas a tenancy agreement in an AST, short hold tenancy agreement in a residential property, like you say, buy to let, you've got to keep the house at a really good standard. You've got to sort of wear and tear. You've got to do all of that yourself. Things get broken, things go wrong. That's all out of your pocket. You get taxed very heavily on them now. The leases are 12 months at a time, typically. So you've potentially got voids every 12 months and reletting fees and things like that. So in actual fact, the treatment for owners as well as developers is much more favourable as well.
Yeah, I mean, the unit that I've been in here, which is the one in the image, I mean, we wanted to try and tie it in, but we're in our 6th year of being in that unit. I think they've heard from me twice to do with any kind of an issue. And so they just get the rent every month, and they've never really had to do. They've had an odd complaint about the fact that the landscape people didn't do bits. Other than that, it's very low maintenance for them, which is good. And as you say, the self-repairing part is a bit of a bugbear from kind of a tenant's point of view, but actually these units that I'm in now are over 25 years old, and they're, and touch wood again, hopefully my roof doesn't now leak, but they're well maintained, and they did put kind of new roof skins on, but that's the only maintenance to the actual core parts of the building they've done in over 25 years. So they have the elements of tenants being in there, and we have to pay a service charge to keep the area in looking the way we want it to be, which I do want it to look nice because it's where we work. So it's not even like they have to take out of their rent to do the grass and the CCTV and the insurances for the site. We as tenants, we have to pay that. And on ours, we haven't even built ours yet. And before we'd even completed on the land, I've got 2 of the units, so I was always going to be a tenant that was going to sign up. But the other 7 that were available, all 6 of them are let. I've got a waiting list of 8 people for the last one. I just haven't decided in terms of which kind of a dynamic works within the people on the estate that I think would complement. So the demand was just, I wish I could have built more of them on the plot, but it was, the only bit that was available. So yeah.
Yeah, so you're oversubscribed. You've got a very quick build time, and you've got them all let before you've even put a spade in the ground. So, from a risk perspective, it's minimal, right? And then you've got almost passive income based on what you've said of your experience of not kicking up much fuss with your existing landlord for the next however many years. So, I think the point to make, wider point to make, is that these kind of units are very sought after. There seems to be a huge shortage of them, especially when you think about everything that's going on in the world. People are retaining or hoarding more stuff, but also there's the last mile delivery. People need to be closer, or companies need to be closer to markets. And then you've got the fact that, post-COVID, a lot of people are setting up new businesses, are looking to, move to local areas away from main hubs. Then, you've got quite a lot of factors that are going into pushing this market on.
Yeah, on this estate here, we've got Hermes and the delivery people. So they've got their big depots, but they're taking 2 places on here and they're a huge company, and they're in smaller estates like this because it's just works out better for them in terms of the areas that they can kind of get to, the areas they can access. And what I've found out from doing this and speaking to the person who was working with the housing organisation selling the land, is that they're working on different plots around Aylesbury to do different housing developments, and all of them have got development land on them. All of them have got employment development land specifically for this type of thing, but it's never advertised. It's never shouted about. They don't really want it advertised because they ideally want to say no one wants it, so let's turn it into more homes. But on all of them, they're there. So sometimes there is a lot of digging to be done to find the plot, but ours, touch wood, at the time, it took ages because the council were overwhelmed, but there were no objections to our plan at all. They didn't even raise a thing. They were like, this is exactly what that lovely field needs, is this development. They literally sent an email back going, this is exactly what this is for. We had to jump through some hoops to get, kind of highways on board and stuff in terms of just how our layout was. But there was never an objection to say, we would ask him for something to be built on a site. They were like, well, we're not sure. Like, it wasn't greenbelt land, it was development land specifically for what we wanted to build. So there was never really any pushback at all. If anything, they were kind of very happy to kind of get that one in.
Cool. I mean, it's a really good time to talk about how you found the site. So what I just took from your last comments there was this wasn't something that most people would find as an opportunity. This is something you kind of stumbled across, but now you know the route to that market you could actually find again. And I think, for a lot of people, if they're searching, or just looking at stuff that's more visible on the market, there's a huge missed opportunity there, I guess.
Yeah, so I started looking on, classic, looking for Google, Rightmove, finding different sites, country-related kind of estate agents that were doing land purchases. The trouble is there's lots of land, but it's green belt and brown belt, and you're going to have to jump through loads of hoops to be able to do it. I did kind of find a very good consultant when it came down to the planning, who helped out all the way through this, and that was like worth his weight in gold, really, because they can help you identify sites where they're like, this will be really, really difficult for you to get planning on. This one would be better on. And he also gave me some kind of pointers to say, when you're looking at land, look out for things like this, which we can then try. So if it's already got a dilapidated building on it, we can look at trying to just develop that, change of use, prove there's a kind of a need within the area, try and build more in terms of on the same scale. So there was a few bits like that in terms of pointers. But you're looking at a lot of stuff, and it's either really expensive, someone has already done the planning and then just kind of put it out on the market, kind of say who wants to buy it at a high price. And then I think you lose a lot of your kind of equity that you could, your profit that you could make out of it, really. And then, and I wasn't coming up too much. So my plan B was, if I saw a plot of land, I thought, oh, that's quite nice. As I was driving around and going, that would be quite good. That's got good access from the road. That's not too far out. It's a good location. Because I was thinking this from just building one unit first. It was never for a huge development. It was like, where was I going to put my one unit for my work to kind of expand? What was going to work for how we were doing? And I just started asking like farmers, if I saw one, they was there, and just asked them. Many of them said they weren't interested in selling, but they were always quite nice and quite polite about it. One person was kind of considering it, but after doing a bit of investigation in terms of where local gas, water, electric lines, where they were so far away, it would have cost kind of a fortune with those bits. Then I started looking on kind of Google Maps at kind of vacant plots, and you can go on the land registry really quite cheaply. Some of them are £3, some are £6, and you can find the information of the people who own those plots of land. Some of them were like kind of companies, so I just started approaching some of the companies and saying, "Is there anything you want to sell?" None of them really wanted to sell, so I started to think, you know what, this is a bit pointless. You know, there's obviously it's a market that is kind of closed off unless you're in the know and you know people really who's going to hand over. And as I was driving back, I saw this huge Savills sign that said development land for sale. And as I pulled in, I thought, well, this is worth a look. So there was a telephone number and stuff on there, but I thought, well, I'll pull in and have a look, because they were building a new really nice kind of office, like a furniture Lucas Oil Furniture, big showroom, really nice curved building. It was beautiful, really, in terms of as you come right into Aylesbury. And as I pulled in, there was a guy sitting side of the road, and I asked him, "Do you know anything about it?" And he's the guy called Stuart who has been on it all the way through, who was basically in charge of selling the land and doing all the bits for the.
And he was Savills.
No, he was like the kind of the contractor that was working with the 8 different housing tiers, because there was lots of different of like the housing companies that owned all this plot. So it was 8 of them, so they all had a little share in this development land, and he was the one who on their behalf was, you know, helping with the build in terms of making sure that he has responsibility for building the roadway into it and stuff. And it was just a gem, and I just got his mobile phone number. He's quite happy to give it to me, phoned Savills, and then just started talking to him and the estate agent. And the estate agents were great, but they're the same thing. They thought, oh, okay, yeah, like we hear inquiries like this all the time. And it wasn't until I called them probably about 6 or 7 times that they decided to go, okay, and accepted the fact that I wasn't just going to go away that easy. And I was just talking to Stuart at the same time and trying to build that thing where I was like, I'm serious, as in I'm deadly serious. And
yeah,
at the time, kind of didn't know how I was going to pay for it, because I'd gone down the route of speaking to a normal bank, the Lloyds, who I bank. Well, they were great, but they weren't interested.
Yeah.
So it was great talking to him.
I think I remember the phrase something along the lines of, "You sell T-shirts, why? Or you print T-shirts. You're not a property developer. We can't help you." Kind of thing.
Yeah. So Lloyds weren't really interested. Yeah, they kind of said, if you want to buy somewhere, then we'll help you out as long as you've got like a 30% deposit. And I was like, well, that's okay, great, but that's not really what I haven't phoned up to ask you for that. I phoned up to say, and it wasn't a random phone call. I'd kind of then got the person's email address, emailed them across kind of the base information I'd got. So I'd already costed some information out, spoken to some companies, the utilities, I'd had all them kind of priced out. So, rather than having zero experience and also looking like someone who's got no knowledge, at least it made me look a bit more serious. And I think after doing some tire kicking from them on me, they basically came back and said, we can look at it, but we would not do anything less than you'd have to put 50% in. And all of a sudden you're thinking, my God, I haven't got that kind of money to be able to put in. And it kind of makes it start to think like, oh, well, what's the point? Because you think there's only banks, that's it. It's only the big banks. Being naive and not knowing on the side of doing this development side, you think, well, if Lloyds aren't going to do it, who does it? If NatWest aren't going to do it, who does it?
So just to put that into perspective for people, like 50% would be about 700,000 of money to go in. So that was kind of what Ian was faced with. Just quickly before we move on, Ian, just touch on the option agreement. So you agreed the option subject to planning. Who helped you with that? Was the actual option agreement itself that obviously went through your lawyer. Was there anything you got to pass on there? Any knowledge that you think would help people?
I think we had to go through all the heads of terms first, which was offer accepted in November. So as of this November, 3 years ago when they accepted the offer. I mean, right. That was COVID-based stuff where everything kind of ground to a halt. But and then going through the heads of terms was like quite painful because they didn't want to change anything. They're like, we're not fussed whether you buy it or not. Someone will.
Yeah.
So you do get to an element where you have to kind of think, okay, right, there's certain things that they're not going to bend on, and you're going to have to accept them. I got a solicitor. I think he's very good, but at the same time, he's doing his job very well because he's being overly cautious sometimes with no prior knowledge. Maybe that, I could have backed out and gone, oh, do you know what? If they're not going to change this, and you're saying they should change this, but once you talk it through with someone and they talk you through it in terms of plain English rather than, the kind of the jargon that's on the paper, sometimes you think, well, that's not that bad. I don't think that would be an option or that would happen. Or so one of the things in the agreement, in the contract that we did was that if we do not get to the stage of slab foundation within 2 years of planning being awarded, they have the option to buy the land back. So at the time, he's like, you definitely shouldn't look at that. I said, well, but I want to start straight away. I'm definitely not thinking it will take 2 years for me to get to the, the slab. So we had planning, so not planning awarded, it was planning awarded and completion, 2 years from completion. Well, we completed last Monday, not this Monday, last Monday, and we're already digging into the ground. So what I knew there wasn't going to be a concern from that point, but he did make it very clear, it is your decision. I would ask them to remove it, but it started to be a bit give and take. Okay.
Yeah.
I won't. I'm pushed on that point, but I'll leave it. But I really would like you to consider this point, and that took probably longer. That was the longest backwards and forwards in terms of getting stuff and getting it sorted. But once the agreements were all in place, and it is very straightforward, and they approved the plans, they had to look at the design and say they were happy with what we were planning on doing there. And they did have some options if we kind of defaulted on that. But as soon as we signed the heads of terms, I was kind of more relaxed because they couldn't sell the land to anyone else. Yeah. Before that, in a whole 7 or 8 months of talking to them, they could have sold it to anyone else who came in with cash in a heartbeat. So there's quite a nervy part there where you don't want to rush it, but you also do want to make sure it kind of gets through so you haven't wasted all this time, energy, solicitors' fees. You've started to get drawings done, you're getting ecological reports done on the land and all these bits. You're starting to really accumulate some costs. And luckily with the people the guy there was Stuart, they were very straight, and it was good. So they didn't try and do anything like that. So it was worked out quite nicely.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of good points there. Like one, being a company owner or business owner, again, as there's probably a lot of times where you're used to trading and trading positions as well. What can be pushed and what can't be. But I think also as well, a lot of people can make bad decisions just because of the opportunity cost of losing something that they've spent so much time on. And there is, the profit is made in the land, right? So, I think sometimes you do have to walk away. I mean, for you, it obviously worked out really nicely, but it isn't going to be that way every time. And I think, having that ability and almost setting before perhaps you go into it of like setting some stop losses for yourself in terms of like money you're prepared to commit, but also time as well. Because we always say internally, the two most precious commodities for every developer are their own time and their own equity. So you do have to walk away sometimes if the other side are not playing ball, but like you say, it's worked out quite nicely here. So funding journey, so we spoke about already. Lloyd sort of gave you not a way to move forward. No. You spoke to a broker, you spoke to an investor. Talk us through that. How did that go?
So the broker was actually referred to by a friend of mine who did my mortgage, really nice guy. He said he doesn't do that type of thing, but he put me in contact with someone, and we had an offer from a company called Vantage, I think, but I don't know. It was so tentative. They were like, in theory, yes, and there was never anything kind of backing it up or following on. It felt like nothing was ever. It wasn't moving forward. The promise of money is not the same as someone putting, information or emails or documents in front of you. The promise of saying, yeah, it looks really good. We're really interested. You can get a lot of that, but then at the same time, until they're going to follow through and kind of actually send you the information saying, right, these are the terms, this is what we would expect. And they wanted a lot of money again up front. So they were willing to fund, probably they wanted about 30% of us to put the money, but they wanted 30% of land and build readily available in your bank up front. So they wanted proof of funds, which is a lot of money, really, if you're looking at it from any point of view. And it's a lot of money to have it tied up, because you're going to have to keep that. So if it takes you 6 to 8 months to get the funding through, because you're sorting out your planning permission at the same time, and everything's kind of tying itself up, you're getting all the legal sorted, you got to leave that money just sitting there. You can't then not have the proof of funds at the end to be able to kind of get over the last hurdle with the funding. So they were nice enough, but they never just felt real, and they never chased. So when I stopped calling, they stopped calling back. So I assumed, they weren't really invested. And then I got put on to someone who's a local person who's obviously got a lot of money, and he generally does lend out to people. He has a standardized kind of agreement and contract that goes through solicitors, etc. I considered that until I found out actually how much it costs, and then I went, I think I'll stay away from that. Nothing against the guy; he was a great guy, really nice, and people do it. We were at the larger end of the market of what he would usually lend. So he would lend the money, but you had to pay him £5,000 every month that you had it. And then at the end, you've also then got the interest that he's charging. So you're kind of getting like a monthly retainer that you're paying him, which at the time when you're spending money doing a development or you're kind of having to pay out to everyone else, you don't want to then think at the end, oh my God, I've got to give him another five of basically my money to have his money to pay other people. So minimum of 12 months. So you wouldn't do any less than 12 months. So you'd have £65,000 back plus like an interest rate. So it was very expensive in terms of doing it,
but more accessible, because I mean, it sounds like if you were being offered something with 30%, that's probably more like 350 grand on this scheme.
So accessible. He would do the whole lot. Well, the thing is, he would do it in terms of a way where it wasn't like the situation now where you do drawdowns, which is actually probably a better way of doing it anyway. It was literally like, here's the money, boom, there you go,
you all of it, right. And
you imagine sitting there with all that would be just too
and
scary.
You're paying interest on all of that as well, right?
Yes, you're paying him a monthly,
which is great for him, but not for you, right?
No, and then at the end you have to give him all the money back plus the lump of the interest on top. So he's getting the monthly for lending it, you going, thank you very much, but at the same time as well. And it just was, if you would do it, so he lends a lot in terms of for people that wanted kind of like, 100, 200,000 pounds, 300,000 pounds, and then they're only paying him like £1,000 a month, and then the interest at the end. So where you're doing something where you're around about like asking someone for £1 million, then the stakes change really, and it was great, and it didn't and it's fine, but it just wasn't the right option really. It's just something about doing it from a person was. It didn't feel like dodgy or anything. It just felt a bit like you're taking money from a actual person who is definitely, going to want it back, and they're physically there. I could sense
knock
they would
on your
be
door.
there. They'd be right next to you. I can imagine they would be looking over each other, going, "Well, what you spending on, or what you doing?" And that's just a bit too. But it was a bit too much pressure, I think, for me.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't feel that comfortable in the same position. Okay, and then Sam, your wife found us, and we started the journey. I mean, I think just from our perspective, I mean, it has taken a while for you to come through the journey because you had planning, obviously COVID as well. I mean, the market has definitely changed since we first spoke. There's definitely more lenders available to first-time developers now than there was. I remember we got you an offer sort of pre-COVID, and it was about 12%, the interest rate. and actually the rate we're completing on is about 8.5%. Everything else is quite similar in terms of deposit in and what have you, but the rate is almost 4% better. So you can see that the market shifted quite a bit in that sort of pre-COVID and post-COVID time, and that's predominantly driven by competition. So there's a lot more competition. It's definitely more of a buyer's market now. Lenders are being more adaptable and chasing risk is the wrong word, but they're more they're looking at deals perhaps they wouldn't have looked at before, but they are doing it in a way where they feel they're actually minimizing their risk. So they're inserting people around you, which is probably something that we want to talk about as your professional team. So you weren't too keen on working with a project manager. The lender insisted on it, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I think I think this is a theme when we were talking about this session tonight beforehand. This is a theme you found throughout, was that people, and it seemed you touched on as well with the agents, they didn't really seem to, and Lloyd's as well, people didn't really seem to take you too seriously because you hadn't done it before.
Yeah. Basically, that there was kind of that really. I mean, project manager side, I just got people who just, I think also then possibly because I was very upfront. I was like, I haven't done something like this before. This is what I'm doing. This is how we're doing it. I think, and then some people come out with. I had one person who quoted saying that they would do it for 10% of the overall cost of the development, including land. And I was like, I bet you would do it for £130,000, but I'm not going to pay you that, because it's just going to kill my budget. So I think that I spoke to a few project managers and stuff, and the general rule, like you get in most businesses and most parts, you get the people who do the really high price because they don't really want to do it. They would rather do something that's more in their wheelhouse, or kind of their more of a niche market that they're used to dealing with. And then you get the other people that it may have been a bit too bigger a project for them, and so they thought, well, if I'm doing it, I really need to make some money off of this. And same with we spoke to a building company who were actually doing Lucas World of Furniture, and I've always been open to any suggestions from anybody. So if a builder came to us, or we found someone, or someone just approached and, oh, I'd like to do it, I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Send me a price, tell me what information you've got, and then we'll have a chat and we'll go through it. And some people don't bother sending anything, so you're like, okay, fine. And some people send you some bits, and you have to weed through the people who, I guess, like everyone does in any business part, you have to kind of go with your instincts and weed through the people you think are really going to bring something to the party. And I would just keep getting loads of people with stupid amounts of money. The lowest project manager I got before I really had to start digging down was, the lowest price was at £80,000. Wow. I thought, I'm not paying. I think if I was doing a big housing development, something really needed, and it had architects on board and stuff like that. But I was looking at it thinking, there's smaller parts, and a lot of it I'm pulling together. I need a project manager to guide me through building control. I need a project manager to kind of make sure, and the one I've got has made sure that we've kind of maybe dodged some pitfalls that would be later on would come up, making sure we had our welfare in place in terms of on-site, making sure that we had our JCT contracts. I mean, if he hadn't mentioned JCT contracts, I'd have just gone, you're doing groundworks, right? Brilliant, off you go. Yeah, and that's and there is a naivety there, and I don't think there's nothing wrong with it. I don't think you should shy away from it. It's a case of, but if you close yourself off and think, no, I'm going to do it regardless, I don't need anyone's help, then that's when I think naivety can make you put you in big trouble. Whereas I'd look at it and think, people who want to help, brilliant. I'll take all the advice I can get. I know my ability. I know that I've got common sense. I'm smart enough to work out if someone's trying to give you wrong information or put you all over eyes. I won't take what people say as face value. I'll kind of have a look into it and say, oh yeah, that is right, that okay, and then do a bit of research around those bits and the companies that you're working with. But I'll always be open to anyone in terms of suggestion of any aspect to do with the project, because otherwise how else are you supposed to learn or find anything out? I've got no idea otherwise. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think just to expand on the point, so, and this is something that isn't unique to Ian, it's actually come up on quite a few occasions now, but what a lender will do is they'll say, look, we will lend to somebody, either a first time or somebody has less experience,
but they want to see that you have the right people around you. And it tends to break down in two different ways, really, for lenders. It's either they want the contractor or a project manager to be overqualified. And sometimes we've seen it as well, where lenders actually want them to be incentivized. So we had a scheme actually in the Midlands not so long ago, residential scheme, where the developer was doing his second scheme, but the partners he had on his first scheme, one was a contractor, one was a QS. So he'd found the site and he was helping with the sale of the site, but the bit in the middle, he wasn't really, involved. The other two shareholders were much more experienced in that. So when he was coming to do his second site, although it was almost identical to the first site, was actually only 10 minutes up the road, the lender sort of picked up on the fact that, yes, it looks exactly the same, but he now doesn't have these two people that have a lot of experience sitting alongside him. So the compromise was that the lender asked for the project manager to have a 5% profit share in the scheme. So the way that played out in practice was that he was paid a retainer as is normal, and then at the end, if he delivered on time and on budget, there's a 5% profit share for him. There's profit on that scheme was similar to this, around about 1 million, and so that guy stood to make basically 50 grand bonus if he delivered this scheme and on time and on budget. The lender didn't specify who the PM was. He actually just found someone through his network. So that was something that got that deal over the line. That wasn't needed here. The lender didn't go to that degree, but they did insist that we employed a project manager, but they didn't insist that he had a profit share. And I think, how did you find this guy? Because I know you hadn't been impressed by the people you'd spoken to first round, and they were asking too much money. But I think you think I can't remember the guy's name now, but I think you feel he's really added value. That's it, Frank.
Yeah,
you think he's really added value?
Yeah, I mean, he's got the experience. He's like this isn't Brendan Edge's brother. He's a lot older than me. He's got a lot of experience, and I think at the end of the day, he's got all of the years behind him. On loads of different developments as well. We don't, and I think it's a good thing, we don't necessarily see things in the same way and see eye to eye. There's certain things that he was saying, we really need to get an electrician and a plumber sorted now. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's not as high up a priority for us at the minute, because I've got a couple lined up, but I can't go to them and get them to commit. I've got no date. I can't give them a date. I can't give them specifics. So let's line this up first. So I think, yes, they're good at keeping you on point, and I think they're good in terms of giving you the information that sometimes you don't know. But I also do push back a bit and rely on the fact of still my common sense. And okay, I've got a few of the contacts and know people locally that I'm going to use on some of the internal bits, and I know what they're going to ask. I know what they're going to need. I know their time frames that they would work to. So I kind of did push back, saying, don't worry about that. That's a conversation for a week's time. That's not pressing in terms of those bits. So I think, and also a project manager is not only ever on yours project, they're doing other projects at the same time. So as much as they're there in terms of as a sounding board, and they are, and Frank will answer the phone anytime I call him. If he doesn't, he calls me back and apologizes every single time for not answering my call and missing it, which is perfectly fine that he misses a call. And we'll go through the information, and he's quick on emails and he sends stuff back. But there are certain days where he's like, I'm working on another project, and he will catch up in the evening on the stuff. But, so they're not always on it 24/7 like I am. Like, you can ask him information about the job and he'll know it. You can ask me information about the job and I'll be able to pick out most elements of it. I'll be able to tell you who's doing what the time frame is, what elements we use, and even picking up some more knowledge in terms of by talking to the ground worker about, I had no idea what an attenuation tank was before starting doing this. Sure. But how the system works, we've just broken ground and we're putting in we've got all of the drainage part going in from there, so we've got a soakaway going in. So there's elements of that where I still love having a PM, but there's sometimes where I push back a bit and ask them, there's certain elements with the building control that they can't deal with because it's considered to be like a design aspect. And I've just taken on and gone, right, okay, I'll sort it. That's not a problem. But then I've moved them on to something else going, right, well, I need you to look at this, this, and this. Is that possible? Yes, they do that. And then, so you can kind of shift things around, but I do still rely on, I guess, having confidence in my ability to be able to do these
Operate.
bits. And yeah, like, you know, I do not know how to do the groundworks personally. I don't, but I can have a conversation with the person who's doing the groundworks, ask him what is missing, what he needs, what's hindering him in his job, why can't he progress, why can't he do them. He can tell me, like, he needed someone to plot one of the points because he was unsure whether the people who built the road to put the manhole in the right place. Fine, not a problem, John. Off we go, and I can go and find the person who then came, checked it, overlapped the kind of the plan with the topographical survey, and then we were all kind of, and John was happy. So rather than tie up his time, I want him to do what he does best, which is the groundwork. I'm quite happy to be the gopher. I'll run between and do the emails.
You're the admin guy.
Yeah, I'll be the admin. I'll be the gopher. I'll be the T-boy. It doesn't. I don't mind any of those bits, really.
Yeah. How much are you paying your project manager?
In total, I think it's going to go over budget already on the project manager side, mainly because I think I underestimated how many hours in terms of I think basically rebuilding control was a bit of a pain in terms of getting a few things that they wanted. Also jumping through some hoops with planning on conditions took a bit more than anticipated, that we had to do a bit of backwards and forwards. And he did have to get involved in some of that aspect. So it's a bit more, but roughly we're looking around about 25,000 from start to finish.
I mean, to me, that seems really good value.
Yeah, and I think it's good. So they go on to a monthly retainer, the people that we're using. So that at first they're kind of on an hourly rate, which is where our budget has gone over because we have had a lot of things to do, and we've had to pull them in on some items that may previously weren't anticipated to have to go on to. But then now we're into the build phase of now. They go on to a specific a site a week visit. They go on to a set amount. So they're on £2,400 a month. They do, for that, they kind of help with the valuation in terms of when we're ready to draw down. So typically we would do that every month. If our groundworker wants every 2 weeks, they come out and do a separate kind of it. But he just kind of checks through stuff and makes sure that everything is how the QS would want it, or the MS in this case would want it. And because they all want it different, or they're all going to kind of ask different questions. And I'm going to hand it over to him to say, right, well, let's make sure this is all on point, because there could also be an element where, with how I am, I just want to get stuff done. So I kind of get involved and do bits, and all of a sudden I kind of look around and I think I'm taking half of his jobs away from me. I'm doing half where I could be doing something a bit more practical on the other end, and I've still got 2 businesses to run at the same time. So pulling myself back a bit and going, right, let him do his job, rather than kind of, stick my nose in or go, oh, I'll just do that, or I'll preempt him a couple of times going, well, I know we need to do that. I've got a spare half an hour. I'll get on it now. Sometimes that can disrupt the flow a little bit, and I could be doing something a bit better. But it is good value in terms of bits, and I was happy with the way they laid it out. And the bills, the two months beforehand, were higher than expected, but I think it's more of a shock because it's until funding sort of physically comes out of your own pocket still. And so as much as I've got it in my budget for what I'm getting from the funding, I didn't have it in my budget from my pocket, because I've already spent out on that over the course of the 2 years anyway. No,
I understood. Well, one of the things points to make here, I think, is that when a lender approves their funding, they appoint their professionals, which obviously valuer, quantity surveyor or monitoring surveyor, and a lawyer. The valuer goes out, values the site as it is today and the end value. The QS or monitoring surveyor, their role, they have 2 things that they're doing really on behalf of the lender. One is to check the costs, and they're going through it in granular detail. So the valuer does what we call a sniff test on the costs. So they'll look at Ian's budget and they go, yeah, that looks about right. Use BCIS data or other external data sources and say, yeah, that looks about right. And then they'll work the GDV, they'll take off the build costs and say, okay, well, that's the residual land valuation, minus obviously some developer profit. the QS is going through those costs in minute detail. And the reason a project manager, lenders like having them involved when someone perhaps doesn't have as much experience is, one, it makes the QS life easier. Two, it's bringing experience to the scheme that isn't there. But the QS, as well as doing that check on build costs, what they're also doing is checking for the lender. So the lender defers this risk to them to a degree of whether they believe that the owner and the team around them can deliver that project on time and on budget. So, all due respect to Ian, he's a very good operator, very organized. And I'd say, I actually make this point quickly now. This is probably the only time in nearly 20 years of working in this business where I've seen a QS be able to deliver their report back to the bank in about 4 days. Normally, these things take weeks and weeks and weeks because people aren't very organized. And the QS says, I need this, and it's a big, long list of information. Ian had a data room ready to go and was able to email it to him the same day. And the guy got his report back within a few days. And that, I've never seen that. I'd probably never see it again. But I think that's big testament to Ian. And I think to anyone watching this evening, if you can take anything away from this, being really organized is probably the biggest skill attribute. Successful developers, they're all very well organized. So do take that from this. But my point is that had that QS come onto site and met Ian, and perhaps, as Ian's touched on already, a lot of sort of snobbery that he found around the different touch points that he's had in this project, that QS might have come to site and gone, do you know what, I don't think this guy can do this. Whereas with someone like Frank alongside him, and I'm not saying Ian can't do this, but with someone like Frank alongside him, it gives him that extra layer of validity, that gives him that extra layer of credibility. And I think it's that difference that will give Paul the QSs on this site. Paul's probably walked away from this. He's got, an exceptionally well organized person who's been able to deliver a data room same day as requested. And then he's got somebody who's sitting alongside him that's been doing this for 30, 35 years, delivered, been project manager on much, much bigger schemes. And straight away, the MS comes away from that meeting feeling very relaxed, fills out a nice report for the bank, and everything's plain sailing from there. So, that 20, 25K that Ian's spending, to me, is the difference between getting the funding and not. And that really is a key point to take away from this, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you look at this, what you're spending in total, sometimes you can look at it and think £25,000. Oh God, I've got to pay someone to do this bits, and you're kind of looking at your budget thinking it's starting to get bigger. But if you're asking for 1.3 million, it's £25,000 to keep you on point and keep you from shooting yourself in the foot. Really, that much to look at. And at first, I was against it because of the prices that were coming in terms of stuff, and also maybe there was a slight air of, I've always had a blind confidence to be able to go, I can do that, that'd be fine. And maybe there's an element of that where you have to kind of pull yourself back and go, well, getting the extra advice and having someone alongside you that knows what they're doing is good. Like with Paul, who's our QS who we use, it's a really weird concept that you pay for a service for someone who is basically on someone else's, on the bank's kind of side. If you were to look at the side parts, the same, you pay their solicitor fee, you pay their valuer fee. And you kind of do want to jump through hoops and impress them to be like, look, this is a good project, and because they're the people who control the money, they control the purse. If we have to make sure we meet his criteria to be able to draw down all the project stops. So I said to him, and I've emailed him in the last couple of days going, can you tell me exactly the information that you want on the day for drawdown and how you want it presented? And he's quite good. He's quite analytical. He'll just send me a list going, I need this, boom. And then so now we have a template that we're going to work towards every time, put it in a template. And if we want to draw down, every invoice has to have this, it has to go with this, it has to have, proof. If he's going to come to site, but if he can't, we're going to back up with photo evidence. So there's lots of bits because we want to get paid quickly. We want to pay our contractors quickly and on time. So to do that, rather than, be, a bit disorganized or not a forward thought to say, right, Paul, how do you want it? You're the gatekeeper. well, I'm going to give you everything you want, but then in return, I want you to act quite quickly on this so that we can get our money back and we can kind of get the project rolling, really.
Yeah, and again, I mean, that's a really important point. It's a soft point, but it's a really important one. I mean, I've worked with developers before where they've met the QS on site and said, how'd it go? And the guy's a bit of an idiot, didn't like him. And it's like, okay, but were you charming? Did you get on? No, we fell out immediately. It's like, okay, you've got to work with this guy for the next 18 months. And he's the one that controls the purse, as you've just said. You know, it doesn't matter whether you like him or not, or her, or whatever. You just get on with it. You know, bite your tongue and just, you know, be as charming as you can be, because that is the person ultimately that is going to make or break your project. Because if they make your life difficult and you can't pay your contractors on time, you've got big problems.
Yeah, and I think everyone who does runs business in general, and you know, maybe the people who are watching this, or you know, even if you don't run business, your workplace, you have to build relationships all the time with the people you work with. You know, who's to say that on the next project I do, Paul's not my guy again? Great.
Yeah.
And half the battle's won because he already's worked with me before, and you know, and we've done stuff, and he knows how I operate, and I then know, oh right, in advance I know how he kind of likes stuff. If I've fallen out of him on this one, I've been rubbish on this one, then you know it's going to make it more difficult for me to get the next one. It's the same with the relationship with the lender. You know, I've got to do this one properly, otherwise, you know, I can't go back to them saying, oh, I found this other plot. They were like, well done on the last one, it was a nightmare. So, you know, making sure that we do that properly is and for everybody, make sure our groundwork people are happy, the people doing the building. Because if we run the same project again, I want to use the same people. They've already been vetted. We already know that they can do the job. The bank will be happy because they've literally got proof of doing it. So I want to keep everybody nicely chugging forward.
Any other words of wisdom, Ian? What would you pass on?
Oh, on the spot now. On the spot. I think I think the main one is the fact of you can easily get deterred by loads of bits, like the money's not out there, or you know, you can't. We haven't even, you know, kind of just saying about from the money point of view, the Brickflow part of meeting and talking with you. The bonus that I found from being kind of only just started, literally doing it from scratch, is you can very easily be intimidated by the jargon, by the, you know, the kind of the way people talk. And you don't want to go back and embarrass yourself by saying to someone, well, what does this acronym mean? And I liked the fact that I had kind of a sounding board where I can be quite open and quite honest in terms of what I'm talking to you, going, right, I've got no idea where to start with this. I'll learn as I go, but you're going to have to do more hand holding with me than you would do with someone else. You're going to have to do more work with me than you would do with someone who is up to scratch and doing it. But it's nice to not go to the bank or not go to the lender and say to them, yeah, I don't understand what this is.
What does GDV mean? Or something
and you're sitting there and there's some other acronyms, you know, when you've got some that come through, you think, what is that? And they all like to use shortened abbreviations. But and I think we had one where I sent it to you and it was about the mortgage on the land. I was like, I'm not having a mortgage on the land. And, you know, but if I'd gone to a lender, you know, that might have given them a doubt to go, hold on a minute, this is a basic stuff and you don't know this. We might start to, you know, be a bit confused. So on the Brickflow point of view, the bit that I think helped me the most was not only, you know, getting the funding and being able to call you up saying, okay, is this a good deal? What are your thoughts? And getting that kind of impartial advice. And fundamentally, you're always saying it's your decision, but this is, you know, this is this deal, this is this deal. But being able to do the, you know, phone you up and say, or send you an email saying, right, can you just talk me through this a second? Because then when I speak to a QS, I don't sound like an idiot. I sound like I actually can communicate with them and they can understand, and you know, and it makes them feel a lot more confident. And fundamentally, I have a belief that I can do it, but it's about then getting other people to think the same. So it was quite handy to do those bits. Really, I think you just have to carry on with what you're doing. If you really do believe it's a good plan and you've done the figures and you've looked at them and you think it's right, and you believe in the team that you've got and you're there, then sometimes I had to push back on the ground workers. He was unsure of the QS, and I had to push back, and we got some more proof and we sent some more pictures over. And I was like, look, these are good people. These are people I want to work with. This is the work they've done. I trust them. I've known them for a long time. And we kind of push back. And in the end, he went, okay, yeah, fine. because fundamentally he's like, well, it is your choice, but if it's wrong, it's on your head how it's wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
It's almost like he's testing you, isn't he? He's like,
yeah.
you know, how strongly do you believe this? And if you push back hard enough, then it is a case of, okay, well, look, I've tried to voice my concern. If you're still happy, then let's move forward, kind of thing.
Yeah. You are invested with it. I mean, you're putting your money on the line. I mean, you it's a weird one, because even though you're borrowing X amount of money, it still sometimes, to me anyway, doesn't feel completely real, because it gets done in bits and it literally comes to me and goes out to there. Physically, the money that I've had to pay out of my bank account, in terms of, I guess, is £37,000 in pre-fees, which I've had to do for solicitors, etc., before we've got to the stage of buying the land. But then you're looking around about £175,000. Like, literally, that's physically what I've had to pay. So the other stuff is kind of on a development loan, which we're then, you know, gonna, fingers crossed, flip onto then that mortgage, which then kind of tenants pay over the course of the next 20 years. And you're then looking at it going, so if we create the site and it worth what I would value it locally to be, which the site in general, kind of looking at, if we sold each individual unit, would be about 2.2 million. I've only paid £175,000 out of my pocket. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, but I believe in the project in terms of from the start, and fundamentally it falls onto my head to get it right. And if I do believe in something and say, actually, I think we should go down this route, this is what I think we should do, these are the people I want to use, then, you know, I think you have to have the courage and conviction to say, this is what we're doing. Because I'm responsible for the money, I'm responsible to pay it back and making sure the plan goes planned. So yeah, I think you can be turned off, but I don't think I mean, I think the seasoned professional will definitely know certain pitfalls to avoid. Next time I can save myself a lot of money. A lot of money on things I wasted first off, doing them in the wrong order, things like that. But it's been quite a good learning experience anyway.
And so, yeah, I think you've answered that last question. Will you do it again?
Well, yeah, as you already know, I've already been back on your website, having a little nose around and inquiring about stuff. There's a 3-acre site, so ours is half an acre, and there's a 3-acre site that we've put an offer in on at the minute, which is 38 units that we're looking at. I definitely would do it again. I see it from a business point of view, as in it's a very good. It just seems to make sense, the cost versus doing it. If you think the steel and the physical structure is £276,000 to make 9 of our buildings, you know, that's above ground. You can't build houses and stuff for, you know, one house for that. And to do these projects, and there's just a demand. So I think lots of people can do them, and some people get put off by the sums of money involved. And it can be scary to do that. But I think if you do find a plot, and especially with Durham, which is just like, you know, literally so rare, I would say you should definitely go for it. And funding wise, I'd come to you guys to get the advice. So just go on the website. It's great because you can just type it in and you know already whether a lender will look at you, and that gives you that little tick. Say, oh, maybe this isn't such a stupid idea after all. Maybe I'll have a little look a bit forward. It's just step by step.
Oh, actually, let's just do a quick demo whilst we're here. So let me just share my screen. Is that on Brickflow? Yeah.
Yep.
So for those that haven't been on the platform before, hopefully everyone has, but if you haven't, let's just start with some basic numbers. So let's say I'm buying a site for 500,000. My purchase costs, things like stamp duty, legal costs, surveys, let's say that's 25,000. And property location, let's say it's in the southeast. I've got new build, conversion, permitted development there, but let's say it's a new build. And let's say it is light industrial, which is what Ian is building. Key point here, you do need a pre-let or a pre-sale. We touched on that Ian's got all his all but one of his units let already. The reason for that is that commercial units generally aren't as liquid. So lenders see it as a higher risk in terms of the onward sale or onward refinance. So by having pre-let, a pre-sale means that somebody's exchanged a contract before you've started building. I mean, that's almost bulletproof. You can get much higher leverage against a pre-sale. On a pre-let, what it does is it gives a lender, the development lender, that is, the knowledge to know what then is possible on a commercial mortgage. So one of the requirements we had for Ian's loan was we had to show the lender, the development lender, what a commercial mortgage would, or what commercial mortgage would be possible based on the rents that he has already got. So I think we had to get 7 units let to get to the level of rent we needed to get the mortgage amount we needed to clear the development lender. Okay, so that's one of the hoops that you have to jump through with these types of schemes. Let's say,
I don't think it's bad to do that though, Ian, to be honest. Just on that one, I think it's quite a nice one because it does make you kind of think about that in advance and really get them out there. So I'm not worried at all about building this thing and then going, oh my God, I've got to pay the money back. I haven't even let them out or tenants. It's quite a nice thing to have in advance that you've already either sold 60% or you've rented 60%. It's quite a nice, another tick box to say, well, this is worth going forward with.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, like you've said all the way through, sort of being organised and thinking ahead is sort of like the key here, isn't it? Okay, so let's say we're building. Our build costs are $1 million. We set our contingency there at 7.5%. All lenders want a minimum of 7.5%. I think the lender on this one wanted 10%. It is, build costs are going up, as we know, all the time. So lenders do want extra cover there. Pre-COVID, 5% was the norm and accepted, but those days are long gone. Professional costs and charges, that's anything that's not a construction cost in that box. So 106 and seal if it's residential, plus any of these other fees, PM, utilities. I mean, normally that's going to be about 10% of the build cost number. So let's work on that. And then our GDV, let's say 2.8 million based on numbers we put in. We can probably build it a bit quicker because it is boxes on concrete slabs. Okay, and we've got 8 loan options that have popped up there. So we've got assets. What's that?
As an assets.
Assets who's Ian has borrowed from. Yep. So assets there. We've got Close, we've got Shawbrook, we've got Aldermore, MSP. We've got Aldermore again, which is a different product, BLG and a Buffnut. If this was residential, we have 37 lenders on the platform. If this was residential, you'd probably be seeing 20 plus lenders here. So there is less lenders that will lend on commercial. A lot of the lenders that will lend on commercial will have a minimum loan of around 5 million. So they're looking for much bigger schemes. So it is a smaller playing field, but certainly there's still plenty of appetite around. And if you've got the right people around you and you find the right scheme and you're a good operator like Ian and you can put a scheme together, then it's all within your grasp. So am I back on the presentation now?
Yeah. So that was 8. You had 8 development finance people on there, whereas I spent about 9 months and I got 1 off my back. I found 1 person, and that was a lot of running around, sending them stuff, doing bits. So if you've got 8 people who say, yeah, well, they would potentially lend you. If you're saying the figures are right for what you've got, it's quite easy. I say I had 1 person in 9 months of running around doing bits. So even though you say residential, you have like 20 odd. Yeah. For me to see someone who would have 8, I'd be jumping for joy, to be fair. Yeah.
No, okay, I understood. So and just to shoot back to the platform quickly, you have this check eligibility function here, which tells you all the things that you need to know about that lender. So how much deposit they're considered can come from investors rather than your own money. Will they lend to a first-time developer? Yes, we know that because Ian's done that. The level of personal guarantee that you need to provide. Will they lend to companies overseas? permitted development rights, air rights schemes, listed buildings, modular construction, all of that information is there for you. Once you've chosen, you're happy with the lenders, then you can choose up to 5 that you shortlist. You can see those side by side, so you can start to see where the differences are in costs. Yeah, and then once you're happy with your selection, you hit proceed, and then you go through to what we call the project appraisal part of the platform. And this is where you start adding in further information. So we'll do this with you if you like, or you can do it yourself. But you basically put in your development appraisal. So you've pulled through everything from the search phase. So all you need to do now is put in the address. You can break down your build costs further if you like, or leave it as one lump. And then you've got to put in your sort of marketing costs, sales fees, legal fees, etc. Your property schedule is there. So you put in how many units you're building. So we're saying 9, or you can add your own. And then you've got 9 units that you complete. You've then got ownership, so a bit about the company, the shareholders, track record if you have one. You had previous developments. That then all lives in the platform, so you don't need to add it in again. And then the last part is sort of the case overview. So a bit about the site, the address, if you hadn't put it in development appraisal. If you put it in the appraisal, it's already pulled through. But a bit about the planning, you know, who was responsible for gaining the planning, borrower, previous owner, somebody else. So you've got all your drop downs there. Few comments with tips about what information needs to go in. Build procurement, design and build, traditional contract, self-managed. Ian's traditional contract is using a separate design and build. And then you've got your deposit source. Is it all your own money, investors, so on and so forth. So that's all the information that you can put on. Optional, you've got your professional team, your comparable properties. You've got any documents that you want to add here. If you want to communicate with us or the lender, you can do that there. Any videos, photos, anything like that, Dropbox links you can add there as well. Once you're happy with your presentation, you hit submit to lender, you accept that, and that will come to us in the office. We'll check it. And then once we're happy, it will go to those lenders that you've selected on the previous screen. Those lenders will receive an email and be asked to submit their best terms onto the platform. So the results you see on this screen, they're estimates of what each lender will lend to you and at what price. Once they get the further information, they can then turn that into a quote. And the hope is that they can improve on what you've seen on this first screen. So that's how the platform works. Really straightforward, really easy. It was myself and other guys in the office that are there to handhold you all the way through this. So like we've done with Ian, if you haven't done this before, you know, we're here every step of the way to kind of give you the support and help you through it. So these are some lenders on the platform. I think that's most of them. So you've got people like Barclays, but then you've got other lenders that people don't know perhaps as much, Alpha, Maslow, Funding 365, you know, all of these kind of people. So these are all the core development finance lenders in the market. I'd estimate that 80 to 90% of all development funding in the UK gets done by these lenders. These are some of the case studies of things that we've done that are all available on the website. I'm going to wrap up relatively shortly because I know that we've gone over time. Real point here for lenders, this makes a huge difference to their lives and is part of the reason why our applications are received so warmly. As someone at Barclays told me the other week, they can underwrite one of our loans and offer terms in about 40 minutes. In the real world, where they receive an application from a lender, from a borrower direct, that normally would take them about 3 weeks to do the same job because not all the information to be there. There'd be 3 weeks back and forth on email and phone calls, and eventually they've got enough information to know they can't do the deal, which is just a tremendous waste of everyone's time. You know, if it comes through the platform, they get a really nice sort of 12-page PDF, all the information that you've just seen on the platform, put into a nice PDF, that they can then just print off and go and hand to their credit committee and get the loan approved. What will happen after today? If you register on the webinar, we'll create a user area for you on Brickflow if you're not already on, so you can have a play about yourself. There's no charge to use Brickflow. It is free of charge, so use it whenever you want. As we said before, find a site, run it through. If it doesn't work on there, move on. If the deposit works, then start putting the hard yards in. But unless you know, and in case I didn't make it clear, the deposit sits in that box there. So we rank lenders in order of who's going to lend you the most amount of money. So this is the deposit here. And as you go down, you'll see the deposit gets slightly bigger on each lender. So if the top 3 or 4 don't look like something you can do, then move on. Don't waste any more time. We'll send you a webinar recording. Join the Telegram group. So there's a QR code if anyone wants to scan that. We'll start going on that tomorrow, and let's see where we get to with that. Like I say, really keen to try and make that work for everyone, and to try and get as much as they can, as much value as they can from other people in the Brickflow community. And that's the QR code if you want to go to Brickflow, but I think you can find that yourselves. Ian, thank you. I really appreciate you doing this, because I think you didn't have to do it, but it's really nice that you did. And I think, or I hope that people learned a lot from it. Were there any questions? Great discussion. Maria's egg, any lenders willing to lend against investments abroad? No, not something that we can help with, unfortunately. So I think that's it. I think we're done.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Ian. Fingers crossed for tomorrow.
Yeah, it's good. Lovely. Yeah, we'll be all done tomorrow. You'll be getting phone calls tomorrow from me anyway, saying, right, we're sorted on those ones, or asking you more questions. It'll be one or the other.
Yeah, or one or the other. And we've just had an offer accepted on 3-acre site.
There you go. But hopefully, fingers crossed. That is due actually in 7 days. They're making a decision on it.
Cool.
So there you go.
Okay,
Lovely.
Look forward to it. Cheers, Ian. Take care.
Thank you very much. Take care.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.